Today, June 11th, 2022, we celebrate the 20th priestly anniversary of our Vicar General, Father Kendrick J. Forbes. When asked how he feels about this milestone, he offered these words.
So when I think of the past 20 years, my first reaction, it makes me feel old. The fact that 20 years have gone by so quickly. But I think that the two words that come to mind immediately would be grateful and also privilege. Grateful because I owe so much to God for where I am today. And privileged because I've had the grace and the privilege and the opportunity to really journey with people from some of the highs and lows of their lives, and to be a part of people's lives. So great gratitude certainly and humility comes to mind.
Born in New Providence on August 20th, 1975, and moved to Clarencetown, Long Island at an early age. There, he had an enjoyable childhood and was surrounded by a community rooted in the Catholic faith. As a youngster, Father Kenny was involved in many roles: an altar server, lector, and commentator at his home parish of Saints Peter and Paul.
One of the blessings about growing up on Long Island is that I had a childhood. I didn't have the responsibility that's placed on the shoulders of some children today. And so I was able to be a kid. I was able to do things that was adventurous, get in trouble at times, but really to have an enjoyable childhood. But my grandmother made sure that all of us were very much involved in the church from a very early age. We had the saying that once the doors of the church were open, we had to be there, and she made sure that happened. So I think that sort of insistence from my grandmother that faith play an important part in our lives, that really set the soil for me to be open to the call to the priesthood. Well, I mean, like anybody, I think you try to discern whether or not what you want is actually what you feel you're being called to. And sometimes there can be a disconnect between those two things. So first of all, I think it was just really trying to ground myself in a life of prayer, openness to the Spirit, and also listening to the advice and counsel of my spiritual directors, and from members of the community itself and the seminary staff.
He received his priestly formation at St. Meinrad College and St. Meinrad School of Theology in Indiana, USA. In October 2011, he received a licentiate in canon law from the Catholic University of America. On November 1st of 2001, Father Kenny was ordained a deacon by former Archbishop of Nassau, the late Archbishop Lawrence Burke, S.J., and to the priesthood on June 11th, 2002. Father Kenny currently serves as Vicar General. He served at St. Francis Xavier Cathedral for 4 years, from 2002 to 2006. He spent the next 2 years as pastor of Holy Family Church. In 2009, he was appointed pastor of St. Paul the Apostle Church, where he continues to serve as pastor. 20 years later, Father Kenny shares some of his highlights.
Definitely, I'd say one of the joys is actually just being able to journey with people, whether that's in their most joyous moments, or whether it's having the privilege of walking with them through some of the most difficult times in their lives. So I definitely say just being able to walk with people is definitely one of the highlights of the last 20 years. And the challenges is, I find myself being pushed sometimes out of my comfort zone. By nature, I tend to be an introvert. I tend to be a quiet individual, and I find myself more and more being pushed to step out of that box that I feel comfortable in.
When asked what is the greatest thing he can do for the faithful of his parish, Father Kenny said this:
Serve them in love. serve them with love, and try to be something of the presence of Christ in their midst.
What is it that sustains Father Kenny? His favorite scripture.
I would perhaps say that one of my favorite passages is Wisdom 9, probably 1 through 11. It's the prayer of Solomon. I remember in the seminary I would pray that prayer almost daily. And I still find myself turning to that prayer quite frequently in my life as a priest. And where Solomon prays for wisdom, and he talks about how he is a man weak and short-lived with little understanding, and he asks God for wisdom from his throne. And I think that's one of the things that I like about that prayer. It resonates with me, just asking for wisdom on a daily basis, grace to do the right thing. I definitely prayer. When I try to really spend time daily listening and being attentive to the voice of God. But then also my grandmother.
Simply just being a priest is one of Father Kenny's greatest blessings.
Just being a priest.
What a priest.
And just being a priest. I think one of the greatest blessings is, first of all, I get to deal with the sacred. I get to deal with the sacred in terms of people's lives. I get to deal with the sacred in terms of the sacramental life of the church. I get to bring Christ to others in the sacrament of the Eucharist. I think just being a priest is itself a gift and a grace.
When he reflects on the last 20 years, Father Kenny experiences mixed emotions, both joy and sadness. Sadness because two persons instrumental in his life, grandmother Hazel Newman and his mother Cheryl Newman, whose shoulders he stands on daily, are no longer with us to help him celebrate.
But as I also prepare to celebrate my 20th anniversary, I must admit that there is a sense of sadness. Sadness because two people who are instrumental in my life are not here to celebrate it. Those two people being my grandmother and my mother. And I stand on their shoulders and I owe them for my life, basically.
Let's learn some fun stuff about Father Kenny.
Yeah, fun about Father Kenny. My favorite food, that's a simple one. I'm a Long Islander by heart. So that's obviously some steamed mutton, some good old crab and rice, some macaroni, potato salad, and coleslaw. I tend to like a little bit of jazz, but I also can listen. I also like a little bit of old school reggae. So a little bit of old school, a little bit of jazz, a little old school reggae. Yeah. But I have a couple, but definitely rejoice the Lord is keeping me to be out there. All I own, all I do, I give to you, and also be around that as well. And the love of my Lord is the essence. Definitely good to put that in that category as well.